You know those people who tell ChatGPT everything? The ones typing long emotional paragraphs into an app at 1 a.m. instead of calling a friend? Yeah, those people usually have something psychologically interesting in common. And if you've ever found yourself opening ChatGPT just to talk, not for information, but because you needed to get something out of your head, you're probably one of them. Because people who rely emotionally on ChatGPT are usually not less emotional than everyone else. They're often more emotionally aware, more self-conscious, and far more careful about how other people perceive them. Psychologists have a term for this: evaluation apprehension. It's the tendency to constantly monitor how you're being judged during social interaction. And people high in this trait usually do something very specific. They rehearse conversations before having them. They rethink messages before sending them. They explain things in their head multiple times before saying them out loud, not because they're fake, because they're trying to avoid being misunderstood. You've probably felt this yourself. You start telling someone something personal, then halfway through, you suddenly change the wording. You remove details. You soften the truth. You say it's not a big deal, even when it clearly is. And most people don't even notice they're doing this. But people who emotionally rely on AI usually notice it constantly. That's part of the reason ChatGPT feels easier to talk to. There's no face reacting, no awkward silence, no sudden shift in expression that makes you regret opening up. And when those reactions disappear, something else disappears too: social pressure. Researchers at MIT found something surprising in 2023. People consistently shared more honest and emotionally accurate information with AI systems than with human interviewers. Not because AI understands emotions better than humans, but because people felt less judged while speaking. And that changes behavior dramatically, because people who open up to ChatGPT are often people who overthink human reactions more than average. They notice tone changes, delayed replies, micro-expressions, the energy shift after saying something vulnerable. Their brain keeps tracking all of it in real time, which makes emotional conversations mentally exhausting. And after enough exhausting conversations, many people quietly stop speaking honestly altogether. Not completely, just selectively. They become the type of person who says, "I'm just tired," instead of, "I honestly feel lost lately," or, "It's fine," instead of, "That actually hurt me more than I expected." And over time, that emotional filtering becomes automatic. That's why so many people who talk deeply with ChatGPT are not emotionally detached people. They're emotionally overloaded people. People who think too much before speaking. People who don't want to burden others. People who feel things deeply, but struggle to express them naturally in real-time conversations. A 2022 study on emotional support behavior found that one of the biggest reasons people avoid opening up is perceived burden. Not pride, not ego, burden. They genuinely feel guilty making someone else carry their emotional weight. And those people usually do something very recognizable. They type messages, then delete them. They almost ask for help, then decide not to bother anyone. They convince themselves it's not important enough, even when it absolutely is. That's why ChatGPT feels psychologically different to them, because there's no guilt attached, no fear of interrupting someone's day, no feeling that you're becoming emotionally too much. And once that burden disappears, honesty increases. But there's another pattern here most people miss. People who emotionally rely on ChatGPT are often extremely introspective. They spend a lot of time analyzing themselves internally, sometimes too much time. Research on introspection consistently shows that highly self-reflective people often struggle more with verbal emotional expression in live conversations, not because they lack emotions, because they process emotions deeply before expressing them, which means real-time conversation can feel too fast for how their mind works. ChatGPT accidentally solves that problem. There's no interruption, no pressure to respond quickly, no fear of taking too long to explain yourself. You can pause, rewrite, think, come back, and for certain personalities, that changes everything, especially for people who constantly feel misunderstood, because many people who share deeply with AI have experienced a specific frustration repeatedly, trying to explain something emotional, and watching the other person reduce it into something smaller. You're overthinking. Just move on. You worry too much. Those responses seem small, but over time, they train people to stop expressing complexity honestly, and psychologists have actually studied this pattern too. Research on emotional invalidation shows that when people repeatedly feel dismissed during vulnerable conversations, they begin suppressing emotional disclosure altogether, not consciously, automatically. Their brain starts treating honesty like a social risk, which means by the time some people discover ChatGPT, they're already emotionally filtered versions of themselves around most humans. And suddenly they find a space where they can explain things fully, without interruption, without embarrassment, without someone immediately turning the conversation back toward themselves. That's why many people say, talking to ChatGPT feels strangely calming, because for the first time in a long time, their thoughts are reaching the end of the sentence. But this behavior also reveals something important about personality. People who emotionally attach to AI conversations are often internally driven people. Their inner world is usually stronger than their external social world. Psychologists sometimes connect this to high introspective sensitivity. These are people who naturally live inside thought patterns more than social performance, which is why they often enjoy journaling, long walks, late-night thinking, analyzing conversations afterward, imagining future scenarios repeatedly. Their brain naturally moves inward, and ChatGPT fits that inward processing style perfectly. It becomes less like using technology, and more like external thinking, like talking to your own mind out loud. But there's an important difference between emotional clarity and emotional connection. And this is where things become complicated, because ChatGPT can help people organize thoughts. It can help people process emotions verbally. It can even help people feel temporarily understood, but it cannot replace genuine human closeness. And deep down, most of these people still want that. They still want someone real to understand them without judgment, someone patient enough to hear the full explanation, someone emotionally safe enough that they don't need to rehearse every sentence beforehand. That's the thing many people misunderstand about this behavior. People who emotionally rely on ChatGPT are usually not avoiding connection. They're avoiding emotional risk. There's a difference. And honestly, modern conversations have become very difficult places for emotionally sensitive people. A Pew Research survey found that many people today believe society has become significantly more judgmental over the last decade. And whether that perception is fully true or not, people are emotionally behaving as if it is, more careful, more filtered, more guarded, especially online, especially socially, especially emotionally. So if you're someone who talks deeply with ChatGPT, who types things here you'd never comfortably say out loud, who feels strangely relieved after finally explaining your thoughts fully, you're probably not broken. You're probably someone whose brain got tired of constantly protecting itself during human conversations, and for the first time, you found a space where your thoughts could exist without immediate social consequences attached to them. That's not laziness. That's not weakness. And it's definitely not stupidity. It's a psychological response to feeling emotionally overexposed in environments that no longer feel fully safe for honesty. The real question is not, why are people sharing everything with ChatGPT? The real question is, why are so many people feeling emotionally safer with an AI than with the people around them? Because the answer to that question probably explains more about modern human psychology than technology itself ever could.